Go ahead, Helen.
Hold on. All right, so now we're live. Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Hellen Fissihaie. I am your moderator. I am also the CEO and Managing Director at F3 Global. We are a DC-based organization focused on capacity building, market entry, and events and logistics for the US and across emerging markets. I am so excited to be having this conversation because I do think it's timely. And it is also something that I think is critical for our communities to be able to gather information, resources, and share the knowledge across the board from all of these wonderful speakers that we have today. I would first like to start by thanking Ms. Iffy from the African Women's Cancer Awareness Association, who's hosting this. They are also working with DC Health on the Credible Messenger program. Today we have a wonderful lineup of really great speakers who are doing and are on the front line of making sure that our African communities have access to resources and information and are galvanizing services to make sure that across the board that we are actually being part and included in all the conversations around COVID-19, vaccination, and making sure that we're taken care of. So I'd like to thank all our wonderful speakers. First, I'd like to thank His Excellency Ambassador Sidique Abu-Bakaar, who is the ambassador of the Embassy of Sierra Leone to the United States. I'd also like to thank Kofi Tonto, Head of Information and Public Affairs at the Embassy of Ghana in the United States. Dr. Jethro Ekuta, Vice President, Global Regulatory Affairs at Alexion Pharmaceutical. Mr. Ronald King, the Community Relations Specialist at DC Health, Office of the Director. Ms. Galila Gitano, Deputy Director at the Mayor's Office on African Affairs. And Dr. Fissihaie Waldu, Executive Director at the Ayrton Health Task Force of the DMV, as well as our host, who is Ms. Iffy Nwabuku, President and Founder at African Women's Cancer Awareness Association. So before I jump into our speakers and provide you an overview as to why we're here, I'd like to give Ms. Iffy a chance to also welcome you all.
Thank you, Ms. Helen, for the wonderful work you're doing already. Good morning, everyone. My name is Iffy Nwabuku. I'm here representing the African Women's Cancer Awareness Association. Helen has done the rundown, but I especially want to thank His Excellency, the Ambassador for Sierra Leone in the United States. This is one of our African very involving ambassadors. So we appreciate you, sir, and we appreciate your time. I also want to recognize the Prince George's County African Diaspora Liaison Director, Dr. Sylvia Darcy. Of course, we welcome our Ghana Embassy representative, Mr. Kofi, Dr. Jethro, Dr. Waldu, the DC Department of Health, Ronald King. So in order for us to save time, I would like to pass it back on to Helen, but we also want to thank our Office of African Affairs in the district for also being a strong part of whatever we do. So thank you, everybody. We look forward to a very, very robust discussion this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Iffy. And I do want to say, before we get started with our speakers, I see we have a really great audience of individuals who come from both the private and public sector, as well as different agencies. So thank you all for joining us. Your time is very valuable and we treasure it. And we recognize in an era where we're all probably a little zoomed out, that we want to make sure these conversations are extremely informative and extremely helpful to making sure that you're able to do your work and get the right information to you from the individuals who are at the front line. Outside of that, I do want to talk a little bit before I introduce the ambassador just say a quick little thing around what the Credible Messenger program is. So the Credible Messenger program is a DC Health funded program specifically targeting the African American community, the Latinx community, and the African community, specifically in order to get us the information that we need from credible, reliable messengers like Ms. Iffy and AWCAA. It's been running now about almost 9 months, and it's been kind of graduating into different parts from first initially just focusing on getting the city access to that information to now making sure that we're vaccinated and that our needs are directly addressed by the city, as well as making sure that there are studies that that include us in the reports. So we're breaking this conversation down into 2 parts. The first part will be a briefing from each speaker. They'll provide you an update on their approach, what they've been doing, lessons that they've learned, also just what transitioning back to post-COVID, post-vaccination looks like for them, and then any additional insights they have. Our first speaker, as Ms. Iffy said, is I'd say one of our greatest advocates. He's taken the mantle of leadership at the Embassy of Sierra Leone since 2019. But before I acknowledge the ambassador and let him just go into it, I do want to say that he's not just an ambassador, he's also an advocate, and he's been at this work for over 20 years, specifically working on the needs of the African diaspora. So prior to his ambassadorship, he's served the community through very important roles. Specifically, 2 that I would like to mention is he was the former president of the United African Congress and Community Affairs Analyst, and the former advisor to the executives of the New York Police Department, headquartered in New York. In case you don't know, the United African Congress is a Pan-African umbrella organization that represents the interests of 3.5 million continental African immigrants residing in America. So as you can see, before he became our esteemed ambassador, Ambassador Way was already an advocate. He was already at the forefront of making sure that our African diaspora was actually getting the resources and the needs. And now he is here to talk to you guys about what he's been up to in that role, and especially how he's been able to tackle COVID with his team. So Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sister Helen. And let me also thank our distinguished Executive Director, Ms. Iffy, and my sister military, who sent me a book, because you know how Millie is. She wants everything to be, she instructs you. She's one of the few people that instructs ambassadors what to do, how to do it. So she told me if I didn't do it the right way, she was going to take my green card. So I don't think I'm going to try my best not to let her down. But on a very, very serious note, I want to thank you all for really and truly serving, keeping this flame burning, and carrying the message and carrying the advocacy for our communities in these United States. Quite too often, if you don't have a few people to stand up and to speak truth to power, nothing gets done. But I'm happy and I'm pleased. I'm so grateful to know that the work that we all started together, that you are still carrying that torch. And there is no better way. While you are thanking me, I should be thanking you for keeping the flame burning and to doing the work which only angels do for our people. Let me go to the script that was presented to me. And they said, you know, my approach to the campaign of ambassador, let me just start this. When the COVID pandemic, let's put it, pandemic started in this country, I came back from a trip in Jamaica after presenting my credentials. So that was sometime in March. And when we came, a week after that, everything shut down. So can you just imagine when our embassy had developed an effective engagement with the diaspora, now everything is shut down. So how do we go about doing it? And this, I must say, was no small measure. We got a request from our government to the leadership of our greatest president Africa has ever seen, Dr. Julius Maada Bio, who, if you all remember, Sierra Leone up to that time didn't have a case of COVID in the country. So that clearly speaks to the leadership, the preparedness, the advanced preparation, and the coordination that our president's leadership brought about. But I can say that I used to always say during these big diplomatic meetings, I said, in as much as the West has been teaching us something, but maybe this is Africa's time to teach them something. So we had a request from our president to our Ministry of Foreign Affairs seeking the support of all embassies, Sierra Leone embassies around the world, to help their country. Well, now, how do you help your country in the greatest democracy on the face of this planet when people are losing jobs, when the country is shut down, when even people who you go to help are losing their jobs, and we were having people dying? And in the meantime, the need to do this is not only greater here, but it's also greater at home. So that was a very difficult situation. So that what do we do? Thanks to a global webinar, we reached out to our diverse diaspora constituencies throughout the United States and in Canada, and we put together a COVID-19 task force that included eminent physicians, social workers, behavioral scientists, business people, and yes, people who did not even have a title, to say to them, your country needs your help. Well, let me not belabor this. Despite their difficulties here, they responded. And I am pleased to say, really proud to say, that Sierra Leone set a model as the first country in this United States with diplomatic accreditation to have a COVID-19 task force. And yes, we liaised with the office of the mayor, and they were very, very helpful. We liaised with the Office of Foreign Missions to bring about what is it that they can help us do. And at the end of that process, for 3 months, this embassy of Sierra Leone mobilized the resources, their diaspora and their friends across the United States and in countries where we were accredited. And we raised material and financial resources to the tune of almost $7 million in 3 months. We did not go to donor monies. We didn't get donor monies. We didn't go to NGOs. What did we do? We went to our people. And I'm so grateful and so thankful that these people responded. And that became the single largest contribution from of Sierra Leone Embassy around the world. And even some of my colleagues in the diplomatic community were asking me, how did you do it? And my answer has been very simple. If you come here as a diplomat and you think you don't need your people, think again. But if you work with them, you treat them with respect, you include them, you invite them, they will rise to the occasion. So the COVID-19 task force, which was led by Dr. Michael Rogers, all the way in Atlanta, in Georgia, helped mobilize other doctors that came. So that became the platform for us. And people did not just, they were using those platforms to bring up-to-date information in terms of disseminating information throughout our community. And if some people did not get the information, and this is what I'm also appealing to all of the diaspora, including my own, please register with your embassies when you come to this country. And I can speak this now as the Secretary General of the ECOWAS Group of African Ambassadors, which is 15 ambassadors in the region, the sub-region of Africa. These ambassadors want to engage you. And I'm sure my colleague from Ghana will tell you the same thing. The ambassadors that I know, the ones that I work with, throughout, there are 54 of us, they want your partnership because they cannot be effective ambassadors without working with you. And so what lessons did we learn? We learned from me that the diaspora also has needs here. They want to be connected to institutions of government. And these government institutions, they have funding. We as ambassadors cannot get funding from those institutions. But if we work with credible NGOs, we can tell we can tell the State Department, we can tell institutions to say, hey, wait a minute, to get this message out, why don't you work with our diaspora? And believe you me, it's a partnership. Let me give you an example, a very, very specific example. When the issue of the Ebola epidemic again surfaced its ugly head in Guinea, I got a call from the National Security Advisor stating that they want to be, this government, the Biden administration wanted to be of assistance. How surreal that one of the most powerful people is calling me to offer the assistance of this country to do three things. One, to help with vaccination, with equipment. Two, to talk about vaccinations. And three, to help in building the infrastructure. But how do we do that? And I raise the issue, Mr. National Security Advisor, don't forget our sons and daughters who are here doing things. That diaspora should be your anchor, working in partnership with us. You're the one that know how to give the messaging. You're the one that knows how to design those kind of things. Since they have put in trillions of dollars now, hey, get a piece of that action because you speak the language, you know the culture, you know the tradition, you know the players, the languages that you speak to the people that you represent. Many of people cannot do that because they need trusted, credible messengers to deliver the message. So when Terry is asking me, what are those challenges? The challenges also, because I'm going to speak truth to power to my brothers and sisters as well, because I know how this thing works. The challenge we face is our community organizations understanding also that you got to partner with each other. If you don't partner and collaborate, it is going to be difficult. No one organization has the answers to this, but when you come together, you make it easier for the government to help you. I have to say, I am taking my COVID-19 vaccinations, both ones. I think it's the same one that Biden got, so I got that. I didn't die. I didn't have any symptoms. And some of you all know, if there were symptoms, if there are things that I didn't like, if I was affected, I'm going to speak my mind. But let me tell you, this vaccine is safe. Take it, because they are doing everything to vaccinate people who are here. All of the negative the negative things, all of the concerns, they are understandable. There are conspiracy theories, we've heard that. But you know, it's good to err on the side of caution. If this is what is going to save us, especially you are here, you are not in Africa, you're right here. I will urge us to seriously consider taking that vaccine. It is safe. I did not have any symptoms, no negative reaction, and I'm here today speaking to you as somebody who took the 2 shots. So please, take it and spread the word to your constituencies that even one of your fearless advocates has taken the vaccine and it is safe. And I can guarantee you it is safe. So how are we transitioning back to regular life? For during that COVID vaccine process, the embassy shut down, but we were still working remotely from home. And every issue dealing with interventions, dealing with embassy duties, we were performing that. And every week we were having meetings to making sure not only that they were doing embassy work, that they were safe. Because at that time, it was extremely difficult to access public transportation because people were afraid that they might get that. So our people were at home, carrying out their duties, working effectively, doing what needed to be done, servicing the normal things that we do. And we as a team, we meet every week to see how everything was happening, how they're doing, how are you handling things, are there issues that we can address? And we did that. So since we things are getting a little bit better, our embassy has returned to full, complete duty, but with the specific instructions that you wear masks. And even every single time people come here, on all of our doors, we wear masks. Downstairs, as you walk in from walking to the building, including myself, there is a thermometer right in front of it. Even sometimes if I try to walk past it, the person in front will say, "Hey, Ambassador, you didn't take your temperature, so take it." So we have those protocols in place, and thankfully, the public is respecting those protocols. So how can we better collaborate with the African diaspora in DC? I think I've answered that. Work together. People could be doing different things, but I'm telling you, if you want to access resources from this government, you're not going to be able to do it alone. But when you come together, to give you an example, as a politician that came, somebody, all the different organizations were coming to him. They said, "Oh, Mr. Politician, I have this NGO." So the politician says, "How many members do you have?" He says, "I have 50. "Oh, you have 50? You know the politician is not going to be excited about that." So the guy went back and had 20 people to come. So when they came back, so the politicians said, "How many people do you have?" He said, "We have 5,000. He said, "Okay, what do you need?" They gave them the resources. So that is the power of collaboration. And that's the power of cooperation. So these steps are not magical steps. I'm sure you do that every day. Look at what you just done. You have assembled a team of experts. There are people, there are Africans who are involved in the development of that vaccine. From the continent, there's one guy from Gambia. He's a top scientist. There are others from Nigeria. There are others from all over. We periodically partner with the Nigeria Medical Association. They invite me to meetings to talk about this, to getting the word out. So those instruments, those processes are available to you. Do not be afraid to reaching out to them. And if we can be able to connect you with some of those organizations that you don't know, I'll be more than happy to do that. Because even though I'm ambassador now, what is good for me, which is a blessing, I've had all these relationships before. All I need to do is pick up my phone and say, hey, brother, hey, my sister, I need this advice or I need this thing. And they have been gracious. They have been generous in helping me. So any additional insights? I think I've spoken enough because Terry must be looking at our clock. And Helen, I know, Madam President, I don't want to overstay my stay, but I just want to say you have assembled an incredible team. And that incredible team you have of experts you have assembled, I know they know more about what to do in this case. All I can say here is, and you all know it, despite the fact that I am here as an ambassador, it was the work that we did together that sent me here. So I'm never forgetful about that. So again, I thank you for sending me to Washington, and I will continue to work and support you and even extend the generosity of your hospitality to some of the most dynamic ambassadors that I work with, because they want to hear from you and they want to work with you. I yield back, Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity. If anybody has a few questions, they go ask me before Terry shuts off my mic.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your wonderful words and providing us that briefing. I do want to reiterate a couple of things that you did say, because I think those are kind of the overwhelming messages that we definitely need to work on. Is one, you said the diaspora should be your anchor, and I appreciate that you're an ambassador who actually means that, plays that out. I've seen it personally. You were one of the first ambassadors that took a meeting with us right in the beginning of your tenure. And then two, you show up to everything, right? You come in, you come prepared, you answer all of our questions, you give us your time, even if you just came back from a flight. So I definitely appreciate that. And you are right that we do have to work together to access these resources. And this conversation is a starting point for us to continue that conversation. We have a lot of great individuals here from other agencies like LAYC. Chris Charles, thank you for showing up to this. He's also a credible messenger for not just the Latinx community, but the African and the African American community and many others on this call. So Ambassador Wei, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you. And I know you have to get going. I know your staff is also here, so they'll be able to answer additional questions at the end of our discussion after all the speakers are able to get through it. So thank you again, Ambassador. And please feel free to stay as long or as short as you need to get to your meeting. So we'll move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Kofi Tonto. He is the head of information and public affairs at the Embassy of Ghana in the United States. Kofi previously worked in a variety of roles prior to his appointment to this very important role, actually. His long tenure across different industries and roles have been working as senior data analyst, system reporting analyst, and especially he was the former executive director of the African Youth Excellence. It's an advocacy agency that nurtures young Africans in the diaspora. I think this role has actually helped him and nurtured him in becoming this, taking on this new mantle. I've personally witnessed Kofi in his work, and I'm pleased to say that Kofi is another great advocate that we have at an embassy. Kofi, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Helen, and the entire team for inviting me. I'm also grateful to His Excellency Sidique Abu-Bakaar Y. I think his engagement was fruitful, and he touched on a lot of issues that are also congruent with what the Ghana Embassy is doing, particularly when he mentioned anchoring the diaspora. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we held an event to celebrate Ghana's Independence Day, and we touched heavily on that subject. You know, it's a fact. We can't really run away from it. Diplomacy is changing, and it's changing to the extent that most of the host countries have our citizens who are competent and are in influential and prominent positions. Ghana, for example, the Pfizer vaccine was led by a Ghanaian named Paul Mensah in North Carolina or Virginia, one of them. But, you know, we have Ghanaians in Fortune 500 companies, Ghanaians in Wall Street, all over the world, in academics, everything throughout the United States. So it shows the value the diaspora brings, and as embassies, our need to leverage the talents and skills of our diaspora. So I definitely share in that conversation, and I think it was a great point he made. I'll just quickly run through what Ghana did very briefly, and then bring it to what we did here at the embassy in partnership with the Ghanaian diaspora. So when COVID hit, I think just about a year ago, Ghana had to shut down parts of Accra, and also other parts of the country, Kumasi and its contiguous cities and regions around it. And then we came up with 5 objectives. The president wanted to see how we can easily contain the virus, the ones that we have internally, and make sure that we don't allow the virus to infiltrate more than we already had it. So our 5-point objectives was to limit the importation of the virus. Our first case came from UK, a Ghanaian from the UK, and then also someone from Europe. Those were the first cases we experienced. And so when we had that, we put in the curfew and other things to make sure, the restrictions and the lockdowns to make sure that we contain the virus. And then we also wanted to provide the necessary resources to care for the sick, you know, because in Ghana, we had isolation centers where we placed everyone who had COVID, and government took care of all the expenses. So we wanted to make sure they were properly taken care of, and no one had to, aside from all the issues they were going through, had to come up with the money to pay for hospital bills and all of that stuff. And then we also wanted to limit the impact of the COVID on the lives of the people, the social and economic lives of the people. There are a lot of things we did in the area, but because of time, I'll quickly just move on. But most importantly, we also wanted to inspire the expansion of our domestic capability and deepen our self-reliance. We felt, you know, this was, although unfortunate, this was an opportunity for Ghanaian businesses and companies to produce our own PPEs, masks, and all of that stuff. Not that we weren't producing it before, but we wanted to scale up to a level where we didn't have to import all these resources from other places. So COVID proved as an example of how Ghanaians can scale up as quickly as possible to cater for our own. So it was an excellent opportunity for us as a people to show that we can do it. I mean, I'm sure most of you have heard about on the news about what Ghana has done in terms of COVID, and several platforms from Washington Post and other platforms have adjudged Ghana as one of the best places when it comes to COVID, management of COVID. So we are very excited for that. But I think this conversation really focuses on what, as an embassy, we were able to achieve. And I want to use this opportunity to congratulate the people of Sierra Leone. I was very excited when the ambassador was talking about the embassy's ability to mobilize resources, financial resources, and then other resources to the tune of $7 million. I think that's marvelous. We weren't able to do that to that tune, but we also did something similar. The ambassador, His Excellency, Dr. Bafo Ejebe, led the embassy and mobilized the Ghanaian society from the Ghana Nurses Association, the Ghana Physicians and Surgeons Association, the Ghana Lawyers Association, and then churches, and so many. In fact, one thing that really struck me, we had an organization in New York, the Ghana Hotel Workers Association. If any group was hit in terms of people who were working in hotels and the tourism industry, these workers were very hit in New York. And as we all recall, New York became the epidemic center, right? But they still came out and donated to support the cause. because they felt that they needed to be part of the fight against COVID. So we had several people coming together, and we were able to raise $60,000, nothing close to $7 million. But it still shows that if, as an embassy, if we come together, we'll be able to get our people to support any effort, especially in the fight against COVID or anything that is positive. So that was something that was very prominent in our exercises. Aside from that, the ambassador engaged the Ghanaian community. We issued several statements. We engaged through media, TV interviews, radio interviews. We did everything possible to make sure that our people felt the presence of the embassy. Another thing that we did was to, in times of all the misery that was going on, we wanted to bring our people virtually together. So we did a virtual concert, I think around May 2020, and we brought together gospel and contemporary musicians, and we were able to pull off a concert that attracted close to 200,000 views on Facebook. So people were very excited, and they felt that, even in all these issues that we were all going through, we could come together as a people and do something that could encourage us and uplift our souls. So people were very grateful for that. Another thing that the embassy was able to do for our people within the United States, including the DMV area, was the facilitation of evacuation services. People still wanted to go home. We had several Ghanaians who were reaching out to us. Hey, we want to go home. We have family issues. We have this, we have that. The embassy, through the support of the foreign ministry, we were able to do several evacuations from Washington, D.C., and then also from New York. I think we were able to help close to 2,000 people between all of us to send Ghanaians back home. That's another testament of what the embassy was also able to do. But the fact is, even in COVID, people still had needs. We had students. We had people who are here working on visas. We had people who needed their passports as IDs. So even though we were working remotely, our consular services were actively in-house, working on a daily basis to make sure that people who needed help were given the help. I mean, I couldn't tell you the number of phone calls that I got from people who were in dire situations. Their passport expired. They need to renew their passport in order to keep their jobs and all of that stuff. We were able to assist in that space. His Excellency Abu-Bakaar also talked about the Sierra Leone embassy stepping out to assist people and then helping people in need. Another thing we did was, in the COVID time, unfortunately, we had a young lady in Orlando, Florida, who was killed. Even though it was COVID time, the ambassador took time to go to Orlando, Florida, to make sure that he could sympathize with the family and attend the funeral and all of that stuff. So these were examples of the things we were doing continuously to make sure that we were there for our people. As far as Ghana, we did free electricity, free water. We gave money to businesses and all of that as well. I'm trying to make sure I don't overstay my time, so I'm moving through very quickly. But one thing that His Excellency also said that was very true to us was the partnership. When we met with the Ghanaian associations and professional groups, they made it very clear to us, listen, we want to help our country. COVID serves as an example of how we can help, and you've seen our help. But we wanted to go beyond that. We want you to introduce us to several agencies in Ghana so we can participate. We can travel to Ghana. We can send equipment to Ghana to help. So it gave us the opportunity to know the needs of the Ghanaian diaspora and the professionals. And we were able to make some connections, but we still have a lot of work to do to help these professionals make all the necessary connections to continue the effort of supporting Ghana. In a nutshell, we had an opportunity to serve our people during very difficult times. It wasn't entirely easy, and I wouldn't necessarily say that we were perfect in any sense. But as an embassy, I think we stood up and showed up and made sure that our people felt our presence. We made phone calls to families who lost their loved ones. As I said, we were able to raise money. We were able to provide consular services. We were able to attend events that people needed our presence. You know, we did everything possible to make sure that we could assist our people in the United States. And then most importantly, those who wanted to go home and be with their families for various reasons, we were able to assist them as well. So these were some of the things the embassy did. And as I mentioned, some of the things the government did overall for Ghana. I mean, if people want to ask questions about some of the specifics, I'll be happy to touch base on it. But I'm running through everything very quickly because of time. I know we have excellent speakers. So I want to end it here. And if people have questions, I'll be happy to provide answers as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Kofi. And everyone, if you have a question, just put it in the chat. We'll get to it once all the speakers are actually completed or have provided their briefing. Kofi, you make some really great points. I think you just kind of highlighted why embassies are very important in this type of work and the bridge that they serve to repair, rebuild, and connect. You know, I've been working with a variety of embassies over the years, and I know how important it is. And I'm just so happy to have two different embassies here provide their own perspectives and especially give us an overview as to what they've been doing. So kudos to you, Kofi, and His Excellency. I know he's gone, but I would like to say hello and thank you to Ms. Rakia McCarthy, Head of Chancery, and Ms. Rachel Horner, who's the Diaspora Affairs Coordinator at the Sierra Leone Embassy. So they'll be here to answer any of your questions at the end. Again, thank you, Kofi, for providing us your overview, and I think you'll have plenty of questions at the end. Okay, so now that we've provided you just kind of more high-level conversation from an international perspective, we want to bring it back to where we are in the heart of DC. So we've brought together two different organizations. One is DC Health and one is the Mayor's Office on African Affairs. Our first speaker is Mr. Ronald King. He is the Community Relations Specialist at DC Health, Office of the Director. He'll be able to provide us insights to the strategy, updates on the vaccination stages, and other valuable information in regards to DC Health. So Mr. King, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. I didn't get a chance to say to the ambassador, but one of my earliest experiences with those from the motherland was my aunt and uncle hosting an exchange student from Sierra Leone. And I've traveled extensively myself in Africa and have worked very closely with those from the continent here in the United States. One of my greatest honors was being asked to sing for one of my heroes, Nelson Mandela, when he was released from prison and came to the United States. So with that, again, I'm happy to be here. What I'd like to share with you in this limited time is to say that here in the District of Columbia, we made our emphasis and goal health equity. And in fact, health equity is the guiding principle of us here in the Department of Health. Many of you may know that the Centers for Disease Control made those elderly adults over the age of 75 a top priority, along with those in the health field being vaccinated. Here in the district, we have an extraordinary gulf of health outcomes. In the very affluent Ward 3 neighborhood of Northwest, Cathedral Heights, Spring Valley, Chevy Chase, versus neighborhoods in the far southeast and southwest quadrant of the city in Ward 8, there's a disparity in life expectancy of over 15 years. And sadly, many Black men in this country, United States of America, do not even live long enough to collect their Social Security. So we decided we would adjust what the Centers for Disease Control had suggested and use 65 as an age where we would give priority to those over that age. And in the last couple of weeks, we've expanded the eligibility to those 18 up to 64 with various medical conditions. And of course, this goes along with first line workers, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to put that out there. Since we have limited time, I want to give you two numbers, or a number and two websites right away, so they don't get lost. If you are interested in getting a vaccine, the number to call, to write down, is 855-363-1444. I'll repeat that, 1-855-363-1444. And to get all information you might need or would like to peruse on the COVID-19, the website is coronavirus.dc.gov, coronavirus.dc.gov. And for vaccinations, since we fortunately have 3 now that we're offering, vaccinate.dc.gov. I'll repeat that, vaccinate.dc.gov. And thank you for adding those to the chat. Now, so I've mentioned that our emphasis has been health equity. We have 3 vaccines now. We have the Pfizer, the Moderna, and more recently, the Johnson & Johnson. And we're very happy to have those. We have tested well over 450,000 of our residents, and we have had to, unfortunately, adjust or make some adjustments to that website, because once the vaccines became available, so many people were trying to get online first thing in the morning that the site would crash, and had done so a number of times. So we were able to contract with a different IT provider, and we now have a new system, and it has not crashed since then. It used to be a matter where everybody would try to make that call to be the first in line as soon as the center would open. Now we do it randomized, and we get back to you. Let me just explain how it works. People may call that number I just gave, the call center, Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. until 7 p.m. And on Saturdays and Sundays, they may call from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. The website one may use all the time. So what happens is, during the week, one will call or go to the website to book an appointment, or I should say to register for the vaccine. What we do is, on Thursdays, we begin calling to schedule appointments. We will call you on Thursday. We will call you on Saturday to schedule appointments. And if we call you on Thursdays at 10 a.m., starting at 10. Then on Sundays, we'll call you starting at 10 a.m. And on Tuesdays, if there are any appointments that still need to be filled, we'll start calling you at 10 a.m. Now, we will call you up to 3 times, and we'll either call you, we will send you a text message, or we will send you an email. You have your choice once you call to register for vaccine to let us know how you would like to be contacted. We know that some people are not internet connected. We have many folk in our city, even though we are the most educated city in the country, we have many people who are not computer literate and who are just not, frankly, very literate, because we have a great schism of wealth and poverty in the capital city here. So you have 48 hours to book an appointment once we notify you, either by text, email, or telephone call. That's to be able to capture everybody. If you do not schedule your appointment within those 48 hours, then you would go to the back of the line and you would have to register again. But this is to make it very convenient for people to schedule appointments. And as our numbers are showing, fortunately, people are deciding to get the vaccination. And to reach people, because in our community, which has suffered so much medical apartheid and racism in this country, we are using credible messengers. Now, these are people who are trusted members of the community, and we are using them to encourage others to get vaccinated, to address the legitimate concerns and fears people have about the vaccines. We educate them on the fact that the COVID-19 virus or disease is a result of the coronavirus, which we've been studying for years. So even though it might seem as though these vaccines were developed very quickly, there had been work on a coronavirus, which is a class of viruses. There had been work on coronavirus for quite some time. And with us marshaling, not just in this country, but around the world, resources to develop vaccines, this is how we were able to come up with these vaccines in what seems like record time. And one of the things I will say the pharmaceutical companies did was to take a risk. They actually began developing these vaccines based on the clinical trials that were underway, with the hope that their respective vaccines would be found efficacious. Had they not been found efficacious, then of course, they would have lost money there. But fortunately, after 3 rounds of clinical trials, there's a class 1, clinical trial 2, and then the 3rd category of clinical trials, we found that these vaccines were efficacious. The Pfizer and Moderna both have 95% efficacy rates. The Johnson & Johnson has about an 80% efficacy rate. However, in cases where someone who has been vaccinated may contract the virus, that is possible, the death rates are nil, and that is the important thing. So if one is getting the Pfizer, one would get the first dose and then return for the second dose 23 days later. If one is getting the Moderna vaccine, one would get the first dose and return 28 days later for the second dose. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is only 1 dose. Now, there has been some talk in the news about the AstraZeneca. This vaccine does not need to be kept under the very frigid conditions of the Pfizer and Moderna. The Johnson & Johnson needs to be refrigerated, but not at the sub-zero temperatures as the other 2, the Pfizer and Moderna. So that makes it a little more practical, and it also is a 1-dose shot. The AstraZeneca was less expensive to produce because it does not need all of the conditions that the others do. Some of the controversy surrounding it, if you've seen tidbits or headlines in the news, is that there were a number of folk who developed blood clots from it. However, additional study has shown that the blood clots shown in some people who had taken the AstraZeneca were no greater than those in the general population. And then there's been just more recently reports that the AstraZeneca may not have given the latest results of some of the follow-up studies. It has not, as of yet, been approved by the Food and Drug Administration in the United States. So we are still closely monitoring the situation with it, and we'll be able to update you later, depending. So I'll stop there to remain true. I've been watching the facial expressions of my hostess. I'll stop there too, so I don't get smacked on the arm. I think I've stayed within my time limit, but I'll be happy to address any questions that might come up later. Thank you, Madam Host.
Thank you, Mr. King. That was a really informative breakdown. It's been a pleasure actually working with DC Health on the Credible Messenger program. You guys have been so adaptable to our community's needs and constantly feeding us information, which we've been able to share across the board. So thanks again for being here, and thank you for providing that overview and that briefing. Before we jump into our next speaker, I just want to recognize a few people that joined. So first, I want to say thank you to and welcome Seti Solomon from the Embassy of Rwanda, who was on here. Thank you for being on here, learning more, and just showing a sense of support. And thank you to other community leaders and the Renaissance Center, Theodore and Elizabeth Nagachu. They are another organization in the city that is doing amazing work, specifically targeting communities of disability and the Francophone community. And I want to do a special little shout out to Miss Nettie. She's been a very great advocate, and especially helping me get the vaccination information out and getting people actually vaccinated. Working with her, we've gotten over 200 some odd people just vaccinated just through making sure that they had this link of the information. So information is so important, which is why this platform exists. So thanks again to everyone who's here. Our next speaker, who I've known for a little bit now, is Ms. Galila Gitano. She's the Deputy Director at the Mayor's Office on African Affairs. She's been at MOA in a variety of roles, so she can really speak to the work that's been done, especially to support and collaborate with this office has been a privilege. And it's been a very hard task, but they've done such a good job in tackling COVID-19 and ensuring that our community has access to not just resources, but to tools to not just survive this, but in some instances thrive. So Galila, the floor is yours. Galila, we can't hear you. Can anyone hear you?
No, we can't hear you, Galila.
We were able to hear you when you first joined, so I'm not sure what happened. No, try calling in from your phone and then muting your computer. The wonderful world of technology that we live in. 1 minute it works, the next minute it doesn't. No.
Bandua on mute or something?
No, she's not muted. It's I think a technical issue.
Yeah, she's not.
She's not. Yeah, it's from her laptop. Probably.
Okay.
So I just asked her.
Maybe go to somebody else, unfortunately.
Sure. Galila, while you work that out, we'll go ahead and jump into our community conversation. So we'll get Galila back in the conversation whenever she's able to fix this technical issue. And actually, it makes also a lot of sense to have Dr. Jethro jump in now because he is what I would say the king of vaccination knowledge, right? So Dr. Jethro Ikuta is the Vice President, Global Regulatory Affairs at Alexion Pharmaceutical. He's actually a very seasoned leader with over 22 years of experience in the pharmaceutical research and development industry. He actually joined Alexion in 2019 of September, and currently he leads the global labeling and advertising and promotional compliance team and serves as the Global Regulatory Affairs US lead. Prior to Alexion, Dr. Ikuta worked for several pharmaceutical and biotech companies, including Horizon Therapeutics, Johnson & Johnson, Sanofi Gensimi, Bristol Myers Squibb, Pfizer, and Procter & Gamble. And before he joined that industry, he was actually a special government employee and staff fellow in clinical pharmacology at the US Food and Drug Administration. He holds a degree as a doctor of veterinary medicine and received his doctor of philosophy in pharmacology and toxicology from the University of Mississippi. He is a certified regulatory affairs and is a fellow at the Regulatory Affairs Professional Society. As you can see, just from these credentials alone, his experience in education is vast, and he is here to actually help us understand vaccination, the process, and why it's safe. For anyone who has hesitations or anything else, this is actually the right person to educate us on this entire process. So Dr. Ekute, the floor is all yours.
Well, thank you very much, Helen, for that generous introduction. Thank you for inviting me to this forum. I think the last speaker before me, my brother King, actually did all the work for me. So, you know, it's easy to say we can just skip my session because he's touched on a number of the things I wanted to touch upon. But what I would try to do is just amplify some of the things that he shared with the group and try to fill in, you know, a few of the gaps that there may be. The one area that I really wanted to focus on was the area related to just vaccine hesitancy. It is very encouraging now that a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon to want to get vaccinated. But we also recognize that there are many people who still have questions in their mind as to whether or not they should take any of these vaccines and whether these vaccines are safe or not. So very briefly, what I can offer is that there are a number of reasons why you should take this vaccine and why you shouldn't worry over some of those concerns around safety. So first of all, if you look at the way that these vaccines came to become available now, which Mr. King touched upon in his earlier conversation, the vaccine these vaccines have become available over a very short period of time, under 1 year, which is really unprecedented. It's unheard of. It typically takes about 3 to 10 years or longer to develop a vaccine. But why did these ones come to become available so quickly? The first reason is that the platform that is being used to make these vaccines are somewhat different from the platforms that have been used in the past. And when we talk about platforms, it really has something to do with how these vaccines are made. So if you look at the way vaccines were made in the past, usually they were either from a live virus, which means the virus that actually causes the disease that you're trying to develop a vaccine to. And what they would usually do is take that live virus and weaken it, you know, through several processes in the lab. And when it is weakened, if you now introduce that weakened virus into the body will still recognize it as something that is foreign and then mount an attack, which we call an immune response against the virus. One of the problems with that is that sometimes the weakened virus can wake up and become its original virus, now causing the same disease you were trying to prevent. With COVID-19, that's not a situation we want to be in. We don't want to introduce something into the body that will cause someone to have COVID. And then one of the older platforms too is that you take that virus and completely just kill the virus so that the virus is no longer able to cause an infection. But the problem is that sometimes the immune response that is generated after the virus is already killed is not as strong. And also it takes a long time to be able to get those viruses, whether they are live or whether they have been destroyed completely. The process of developing them to become vaccines is very long. With a pandemic like COVID, if you want to go through that process and have people wait another 3 to 10 years, well, maybe by the time you get one out, everybody would have been dead. So the world needed to come up with something novel. So the technology that they are using to make these vaccines is really one that relies on the genetic code of the virus. So a virus has got a genetic code that determines how that virus should be produced and what the components of that virus should be. So because we have the technology today, as soon as the virus was discovered, they were able to map what that genetic code is. And by knowing the genetic code, you don't need to work with the live virus or the killed virus. You just need to take that code and do whatever it is you want to do with it. So a portion of that code is the portion that makes what you call the spike proteins. If you've ever seen the picture of coronaviruses, you will see some things that look like crowns sticking out all over the place. Those are spike proteins. The spike protein just allows the virus to be able to attach to the cells and enter into the cells. But that's not the essential part of the virus. The essential part of the virus is actually the genes inside that virus itself, which is surrounded by those spike proteins. So what they've tried to do is take the code that makes the spike protein and introduce that into cells. And when they get into the cells, they direct the cells to make the spike protein. This spike protein now becomes what you call an antigen. An antigen is a portion of a disease-causing agent like a virus that causes the body to recognize it as foreign and thereby mounts an immune response against it. So the two vaccines, the first two vaccines by Pfizer and Moderna were based on this genetic material, which you call a messenger RNA or RNA. And that messenger RNA, they basically make sure that the spike protein that makes the portion of the virus that causes the immune response is introduced into the cells, and then it allows the body to mount an attack. And the purpose of vaccines in general is just to prime the body so that it's able to recognize the real virus when eventually one is exposed to it, so that your body is prepared, is ready to mount an effective attack. So the technology is really one of the things that made these vaccines to become available very quickly. The second thing, which Mr. King alluded to also, is the resources that were deployed. The US government, for example, set up Operation Warp Speed under the former President Trump, which mobilized the tremendous resources towards developing these vaccines. They gave money to the companies to allow them to be able to do some of the things they normally did in the past that they wouldn't have been willing to commit resources to, because those things had to be done sequentially. This time, the government said, we are taking the risk, we own the risk. You go do whatever needs to be done. So that allowed the companies to be able to do things earlier than they would have ordinarily done, because many of the things that usually were done in steps, now they were done in parallel. For example, when you go into clinical trial, you have 3 phases, phase 1, 2, 3. Phase 1, you try to find out if the vaccine is safe, and you do in about maybe 20 to 100 people. Phase 2, you want to find out if the vaccine works, and that you do in a few hundred people. Then you go into phase 3, which to know how it's going to play out in the general population. And you would do that typically in several thousands of people. In the past, you would have had to do those in sequence. You do 1 first, understand what it is, then go to 2, then go to 3. But with these vaccines, almost all those 3 phases were running in parallel, and they were being done at risk, such that if you got to the end, like phase 3, where you commit a lot of resources, if it didn't work out, you have lost all of that money and all of that time. So by taking that risk, it allowed, we're fortunate because those things ended up working. And so we didn't have to go through that. A third thing is just the transparency. So everything that is being done is done in the public domain. So if you want to look at, for example, the data that the FDA and other bodies relied on to approve these products, you can go on the website and see that. Anybody can see that. So it's not something that is hidden. And you have many different stakeholders that are involved in the process of approving. So one of the ways that the government decided to approve these vaccines was through the use of emergency use authorization. So that is not a traditional means of approval. You only use that when you have a public health emergency like the one we currently have now, that the government can say, we have enough information to show this works and that it's safe. And while we are still collecting more data, it can now be used. So they use that process. Otherwise, if you want to wait for traditional approval, it will take the FDA about 1 year to approve. But we don't have the luxury of doing that. So the transparency piece is important. And finally, you have many different stakeholders involved in the process. The companies go through the trials, but then the data go to the FDA that then looks at the data to determine if it's safe and if it's effective. Then you have, while the companies are doing the trial, you have what you call an independent data monitoring committee, which is a set of experts that are independently looking at that data outside of the company. And then when the company sends that data to the FDA, you have FDA reviewers looking at the data. The FDA also has an advisory committee of experts that are not part of the FDA that also look at that data and make recommendations. And then the FDA looks at all of that together and determine if it should be approved or not. Once it is approved, it still doesn't go into people. You have the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, that now has to look at all of that data to determine whether or not people should get this, and if so, how do you prioritize who gets it first, who gets it second, who gets it third? So that's how they came up. Because we don't have enough of the vaccines right now, they had to prioritize by making sure the people that are at the greatest risk of either being exposed to the virus, or if they are exposed to the virus, they can't handle, their bodies cannot handle it well. Those were prioritized. Like people living in long-term care facilities and healthcare providers were at the top of that priority. And then they worked their way through. I think just last week, it was announced that as of May 1st, every American adult, everywhere from age 16 and above, who wants to get that virus will be able to have access to it, because enough of the vaccines will be available. So and then when overall, I'm just going to end on this note. If you look at all of those processes, and then the fact that the data themselves show that these vaccines work and that they are effective, then that should give you a level of comfort to actually want to take it. And my encouragement is that everybody should take it, and you should encourage others to take it as well, because the vaccines are both safe and effective. So I'm going to stop at that. And if there are questions related to vaccines later on, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ekute. That was so helpful. I see comments saying how helpful it is. I know for me, it helped dispel some thoughts or ideas about the process and just clarify a little bit more. Especially hearing it from someone like you made me feel much better. I know I'm getting it, and I know I've made sure that my parents have already had it. So thank you so much for clarifying that. He did actually do a previous presentation with the AWCAA. So I think the recording is actually on their website for the full version of it. I know some of you guys asked questions, so we will make sure that we get him to answer those at the end. So thank you again. So we're going to move on to our next speaker. We're going to try Galila one more time just to make sure. I know she joined in again. So Galila, are you able to, can we hear you this time? Galila, I think it's connecting, so just give her 1 second, everyone. Galila?
Yeah, can you?
Yes, great, Galila, thank you. We can hear you now. And just for those, I did an initial introduction on Galila, but she is Galila Gaetano. She is the Deputy Director for the Mayor's Office on African Affairs, and she will go ahead and provide you her briefing. The floor is yours, Galila. And we can hear you, so just unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
It's a bit of an echo, so you might want to turn off like your laptop or, you know, stop the video or something like that.
Okay. How about now?
There's an echo.
It's still an echo, but you know what? If we can hear you from your phone, I would say just like leave your laptop altogether. Just leave from the laptop.
Okay, so I've left my laptop altogether now, so can you hear me hopefully without noise?
Yes, this is great. We can hear you now.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Ms. Ify, for inviting the Mayor's Office on African Affairs for this event. This is really great. We really appreciate to hear all the different perspectives and all the different stakeholders that have been involved in working through this pandemic and making sure the African residents in the districts are well served. So what our office has been doing from the beginning of the pandemic last March. So I was the language access coordinator, just to give you a brief overview. As a language access coordinator, one of the roles is to make sure that all the documents that go out from any of the agencies, and at this point from the Department of Health, all the information related to COVID was out to our constituents in the languages spoken. So given that Amharic and French are widely spoken among the African constituents in the district, that is what we are making sure that all the agencies had that information out, and the district residents knew how to prevent themselves and how to protect themselves during the pandemic. And we have also, the office has also been working with different partners in terms of getting our residents tested, DC residents being able to get tested, and also at those testing centers, all the information was available in both French and Amharic, just to ensure that everyone involved would have access to the information that they need. Our office has also been involved in terms of providing access to food. So we were at different food distribution centers in collaboration with our grantees, with some of our grantees, and also in collaboration with other agencies that were providing food during the pandemic. Currently, our office is also working with different agencies, the Department of Health, as well as different CBOs, to make sure that all our residents are aware of the vaccine. And it's really great to have panelists here today speaking about the vaccine and how important it is for all the residents to be vaccinated. And our office is doing its utmost outreach and everything that we can to make sure that our residents, once eligible, those that are being eligible are getting it, and once everyone is eligible, that they go and get it. And we are using our partnership with the faith-based organizations and other CBOs to make sure that this information is out to the community. So we know that it takes a lot of education, a lot of outreach, a lot of communication, and working in partnership with the different agencies. And also, Helen and Ms. Ify have been really great partners, and we will, going forward, we want to ensure that we use our partners with everyone involved in this call as well to make sure that our DC residents are vaccinated and our African residents are aware of all the information that's out there and make the right decision based on those scientific and credible information. So if you have any questions in terms of what the Office on African Affairs does in terms beyond the COVID pandemic, I am very happy to speak to you, or we can connect online at a later stage, but I just wanted to give a broad overview of what we do, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Galila. Thank you for working with us through the technical difficulties as well. And thank you for providing that brief overview. If you have questions, like we said, just please send them in the chat and we'll make sure that we'll get to them. Okay, so we're gonna go on to our next speaker. So I'm sorry, I thought I was not on mute. Okay, so thank you, Galila, for providing us that overview and just working through the technical difficulties. We appreciate you and what the office has been doing in support of our community. If you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them. And now that we've basically been able to provide you a larger overview from the international agencies and then local DC government agencies, we'd love to bring it down to, we're gonna bring it down to actually what local community stakeholders are doing, different organizations and nonprofits in the city, which you may or probably are one of them. But we're gonna have Dr. Fissihaie will provide us a briefing first. And just to give you a quick background on Dr. Waldo, he is the Executive Director at the Urgent Health Task Force of the DMV. This task force made up of doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and other frontline workers to educate, inform, and provide needed resources to the DMV, Eritrean, and African communities. Something to note is how quickly this task force was formed and moved to action. Once COVID started, they quickly mobilized medical professionals from across the DMV and began to collaborate with other partners to ensure that they were able to answer and refer people who needed these resources. Something to also note is how experienced Dr. Waldo is. He has a long track record across the different DC healthcare systems, having worked at Howard Hospital and currently the Vice President of Population Programs and Community Affairs at MedStar Health, and he was the former Associate Vice President for Quality and Clinical Affairs. And lastly, before that, he was the Howard University Health Systems. He was the Senior Deputy Director of the Health Regulation and Licensing Administration. As you can see, he is actually the right person to lead a task force such as this. So Dr. Waldo, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. That was very generous. I see my friend Ronald King, who is my former colleague and my friend. It's good to see you, man. So the organization came about a year ago in March of 2020 in response to the pandemic and how this pandemic was spreading across the community, especially in the African and the African American community in the district in Maryland, Virginia. So what we have done is we came together different stakeholders, recognizing that there are between 40 to 50,000 Eritreans who live in the DMV area. And we understand that there is a lot of lack of information, lack of access, as well as misinformation within the community. We have heard a lot of stories in terms of how the community understand and also respond to this kind of pandemic. As you know, initially people talked about this is a disease that does not affect Africans, because initially the African American community was not really affected by COVID. So we healthcare professionals around DMV came together and say that this is really existential threat to our community. One is because there is a lack of information. There was a lot of information that was coming from a lot of different sources, and that was difficult for a lot of our community members to digest. So we felt that if this information was digested and brought into the community in their language and understanding the community deserves, so we came together and we created the association. The association, initially what we did was we set up a radio station, a weekly radio station, where pandemic-related information was going to be disseminated through the AM radio station to Eritreans and other community members to learn more about this pandemic from their own community by their own language, and we also got into the social media, and we gathered all of the stakeholders, especially the churches, the mosques, and community groups, and other like long-term care facilities and others, to understand and disseminate this information. So the radio station will present different topics, topics related to mental health with the pandemic. It will also address social issues. It will also address some relevant information about the pandemic. And we had gathered all of the churches and worked with them and have a taped information available to them so that they could distribute it to their members. We also have information about social social issues as well as contact tracing if someone was affected by COVID. So to make the long story short, this have been very successful in terms of reaching out to people, bringing them information by trusted and culturally and linguistically competent providers. So this has been going on for the past year. We meet once a week. We look at the data, see how COVID is being spread in the DMV area, and we will inform through different programs to our community. Currently, what we are doing is we are trying to address the issue of vaccine hesitancy. People have a lot of worries about this vaccine. There is a lot of misinformation about the vaccine, and our work is to make sure that that is addressed. So currently, we are working with Medstar to collect Eritreans who are 65 and above, and also Eritreans with underlying conditions to register in their churches so that we are able to direct them to get some vaccines across the city. So we started that last week, and we have also partnered with the African Women Cancer Awareness Association in writing grants. We have a successful grant application that was funded by the DC government. We also have submitted a proposal to Pfizer to inform our communities. And we also have been receiving PPE from the African Women's Awareness Association to distribute to our members, and we've been doing that. So there is a lot of issues, obviously, that we have to deal with. One of the most relevant issues that we are dealing with is misinformation and people generally being afraid of the unknown. So in that area, we have worked very hard in making sure that people are getting vaccine information from pharmacists, from physicians, from nurses, and other healthcare professionals, so they can have the confidence level that they will be able to receive this. So we have been successful so far. We have been getting a lot of interest in people who are trying to get vaccinated. So we are directing people to vaccination sites, and we are helping them in terms of registration and making the appointments, and if need be, providing some kind of transport. So that's in a nutshell what it looks like, and I don't want to take too much time because the time is up. So thank you, Helen, for allowing us to come and share our experience with the larger African community.
Thank you, Dr. Waldo. And I see that technically we're at our start sign, but I would like to ask everyone to stay on for maybe 10 to 15 minutes if you can, just because we do have a few questions. And we have one more speaker, and you definitely want to hear her because she is the organizer. So thank you, Dr. Waldo. That was very helpful. And I look forward to continuing, to support you guys and making sure that you guys are out there at the forefront and get the resources that you need. So our last speaker is, and just FYI, some of the questions that people are asking, the speakers are actually responding to them directly on the chat. So please look for your answers there. Make sure that, I know 2 questions have already been answered, one by Mr. King and one by Dr. Ekute. But we have one last speaker, and then we'll try to get to the last 2 questions, okay? All right, so our final speaker is Miss Ife Nwabuku. And I don't know why I just said that because I know her name really well since I've worked with her for so many years. Miss Ife is, I don't know what to say about her except that she definitely has a heart for our community. She's been doing this work for over 15 years. She has been recognized. She served as commissioner for the Mayor's Office on African Affairs. She serves as definitely like one of the greatest women advocates in the city that we have, specifically targeting the African women. She serves the vulnerable community, right? So our mothers, aunts, anyone who doesn't have resource, especially if they're dealing with cancer, this organization, the African Women's Cancer Awareness Association, has been at the forefront of getting resources. And even if you don't have cancer and you have other ailments, sometimes Ms. Iffy is that resource. So I'll let her speak for herself and educate you guys on what they've been doing in terms of COVID. So Ms. Iffy.
Okay, thank you so very much, Ms. Hellen. Once again, on behalf of the African Women's Cancer Awareness Association, I stand here to very humbly say thank you to the African community and to the African American community. I believe that as a community, we have to look out for ourselves. Our sons and daughters have actively been part in battling COVID, either by being part of those who are part of the solution in the vaccination, or being in the forefront as healthcare workers. So it's very elated today that we are able to bring this number of our people well educated with the knowledge, encouraging and educating all of us how we can go the last stretch of this pandemic. So the African Women's Cancer Awareness Association have been in existence. This is our 17th year, and we're not going anywhere. It's very rewarding to know that we're able to partner with other organizations. Just like you heard Dr. Waldo speak, we work with them very well. We work with the Cameroonian organizations. And as far as we are concerned, we are one people. If we can work together, the Sierra Leonean ambassador already stressed that we need to partner with each other. We're here in a foreign land, but by default, it has become our home. So we need to do the best we can to take care of ourselves, educate our children, and also go back home and do what we can to lift up the people we left at home. So because we're out of time, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everybody who had logged in today. Most people were at work. It's been a very, very wonderful, robust discussion. Hopefully, we will get together again. But thank you, everyone, for being part of this conversation. We want to hear from you. If there are questions and answers, I will yield my time so we can answer some of your questions. So thank you again very much. Hellen, thank you for a great job.
Thank you, Ms. Iffy, and thank you for the work that you continue to do. 2 out of the 5 questions have been answered in the chat, okay, but I see that there are 2 more questions. So this first one, and maybe these 2 actually go to Kofi. The question is, I wonder why Ghana is giving this shot when they have done an excellent job to keep the numbers low. So that's a question for you, that's targeted towards you. And maybe Kofi can also answer a second question. This is, I'm not sure who to direct this question to, but where can we get resources to educate our public Ghanaian diaspora on the safety and need to get vaccinated?
Oh, okay. The second question came from Angie. I work with Angie. So I think it's to Dr. Jethro and other experts on the issue. And then I think Mr. Ken, if they have any resources, because people want to know and be assured that the vaccine is safe. So that's from Angie, my team. Okay. And then the first question, Ghana was the first country to receive the COVAX vaccine from WHO. It's a vaccine that was developed in India. We received about 600,000. And just about a few days ago, we received $160,000 from MTN, which is a mobile network in Ghana. And that was a donation from MTN. They've committed $25 million to support the mobilization of vaccines. Ghana intends to vaccinate about 17 million people by end of July, June, July. And to the question, right now, Ghana stands about 89,000 overall in terms of how many people got the virus. I wrote it here. I wanted to, where did I put it? About 89,000 people. Right now, we only have 2,900 and something active cases. We've had a total of 734 deaths. So reasonably, not that any life doesn't matter, every life matters to us, and we send our sympathies to all the families, but to the question, we don't want to get caught unaware. You know, the fact that we've been able to control the virus, at least reasonably within our environment, doesn't mean we don't strategize and solution ahead. So we just want to make sure that we vaccinate as many people as possible, especially frontline workers, from the health workers to the police to all people who are frontline workers, and then to the citizens, to make sure that we reach the necessary, I think the doctors will know this, the herd mentality, so that we avoid any form of last minute issues. Ghana wants to get back to business. We want to get the country moving and the country working again. The economy was hit. And in order for us to fully reopen the country and get things moving, we need to act and be progressive. And that's the reason why we want to do that. So we hope to, by end of July, vaccinate as many as 17 million people, so we can give people their lives back and do what they have to do. So that is the reason why we won't wait till we get caught flat-footed. Yeah. So I hope that helps, Helen.
Yes, thank you, Kofi. I think that definitely answered the individual's question. And I think I have another one. So this one is for Dr. Walju. It says, and maybe, actually, before I jump to that, there's another question, and maybe you are the right person, Kofi. So I just want to make sure I ask that question since it was requested. Okay. It says, on another note, can they tell us what has been done in regards to vaccines for the African countries as infection rate is getting higher? Maybe you can talk to it specifically from Ghana's perspective.
Yeah, I think the first question is very similar to this one. The answer is the same. We were doing very well. And then I think a month and a half ago, we just started seeing another spike from the UK variant, right? And we've been able to contain it. It's coming back down again. So we are doing everything possible to make sure that we get ahead of the curve. That's been the mantra from the beginning, and we are not running away from it. So we are investing money. Like I said, we were the first country to get the COVAX facility from WHO. MTN is helping. Ghana as a country is also acquiring 17 million vaccine doses again to support the effort. So we are not resting in any sense. We are going to continue doing everything possible to make sure our people are vaccinated. And then we also continue to educate our people. We have the Information Services Department under the Ministry of Information that's actively working with Ghana Health Services to make sure we educate our people. And like I think Dr. Jethro said, people are now beginning to believe in the vaccine. We had similar issues when it started, but now people are getting more comfortable and people are taking it. The president took it, his wife, the vice, ministers, entertainers, people in the security services, You know, so I think people are getting more comfortable. But people in the hinterlands, we still have a lot of education to do to make sure they are also comfortable. Yeah.
Thank you, Kofi. This next question, Dr. Waldo, Mr. King, Ms. Iffy, Galila, anyone can take this. Is there a way that DC government can arrange mobile clinics to vaccinate the people who cannot drive and have no one to help them? So specifically, they're targeting those who are immobile or have no access to just getting to the vaccination sites. Who would like to take that? Maybe we can start with Mr. King.
Yeah.
He's still here.
Hi, can you hear me? Great.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, we do have elderly residents in the city who are not that mobile, and we have set up a special vaccination clinics for them. We actually send staff to the residences of many of our elders to register them on the spot. We are working with our faith community and have established vaccination clinics at them where folk can simply register through their faith communities, their churches, mosques, or temples, without having to go through the regular portal. So we're making extensive efforts to reach those who have difficulty. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Effie or Dr. Waldo, would you like to
and
add?
we are also, it's there is what we are trying to do is obviously we in the District of Columbia, we know that 96% or so of our residents are Medicaid, and a large percentage of that is under the managed care organizations. So we will identify their managed care provider, and as you know, managed care companies also provide transportation issues and other services. So that is how we are coordinating our effort.
Ms. Effie, did you want to add to that?
Just to say that as we work mainly in Prince George's County and the district and in Montgomery County, we try to work with the Diaspora office in the district and in Prince George's County. And I also belong to a group of the Nigerian Nurses Association. So when we have any issues or have like our senior citizens that need any special help, we make sure we coordinate. Now that I'm one of the grantees for the district, coordinate with their DC office or the mayor's office or the Prince George's County. So we're able to resolve or solve those barriers that stops our elderly people or those who just cannot afford it or who are not literate enough to be able to register for these things. So our staff ears and everything open and out there trying to make sure we're able to combat any of these barriers.
All right, thank you. And we're going to conclude with this last piece that goes out to Dr. Ekute. There were two questions posed, which you typed in, but I'd like you to, provide an overview or if there's any additional things you wanted to say versus just texting. The first questions, are there tests available in terms of antigens? You said you can easily get these tests by driving through certain pharmacies like CVS. You can also reach out to your local health departments and they can guide you to where you can get a test in your local area. So if you'd like to add to that, and then I'm going to give you the second one since you've already answered them, but just a chance to wrap up any final thoughts you have. The second question to you, Dr. Jethro, was by Agnes Johnson. How widely available are antigen tests? In the second, which I think I just answered. And the second question, as I scroll through, right, was, Okay, the last question was Dr. Akute. How different is the Johnson vaccine from Pfizer and Moderna vaccines? And are there any concerns for some in the African diaspora of its safety in terms of side effects or efficiency? So if you'd like to add to your already chat responses, feel free.
No, thank you. So, just in terms of the testing, my advice will be to, maybe reach out to your local health department, because in every state and every local area, different things may be available. So if you can either contact them or go to their website, all of those local health departments usually have a list of where you can get tests. So that's what I would suggest in that regard. In terms of the different vaccines, at the end of the day, what you want a vaccine to do when it comes to COVID-19 is to prevent death. That's the ultimate goal, and also to prevent severe disease. You don't want somebody to end up in emergency room or in critical care, in an ICU, where they may be struggling between life and death. And all three vaccines prevent those things. The three vaccines keep people from being hospitalized, they keep people from having severe COVID, and they prevent death. In fact, it's 100% protection in terms of all three vaccines preventing death. So the fact that anyone who has taken those vaccines did not die of COVID, that alone should be enough to encourage people to take the vaccine. The other point that I will say about the safety of these vaccines is that the safety has been adequately characterized. These vaccines by themselves cannot cause COVID. It's very important for people to realize that, because as I said at the beginning, based on the platform on which these vaccines are based, you cannot get COVID from taking the vaccines. So if anyone has any fear whatsoever that, well, if I take this vaccine, I may get COVID, zero chance of that happening. And so because the vaccines only use a small part of the virus, which by itself, it doesn't contain the genetic material, which is the real part of the virus that allows the virus to multiply. So because it doesn't have the full virus, it cannot multiply inside the body. And so I hope that people can be reassured that these vaccines are safe. The Pfizer and the Moderna, the only difference is that the Pfizer and Moderna are the same. Basically, you can call them the same vaccine. The Pfizer is different because it uses a different platform. It uses a virus, adenovirus, which has been weakened or killed. And they use that to convey the genetic material into the cells. But once those genetic material get into the cell, all three vaccines work in exactly the same way. Because from that point on, all that the genetic material does is instruct the body to make proteins. And those proteins then become antigens. The body mounts an attack against those antigens and prep your body so that when next you are exposed to the real virus, you don't become infected and don't have the disease. So they all do the same thing. It's just how do they get into the body? That's the main difference across them. And even though the J&J shows a slight decrease in efficacy, again, where it really matters, it does the work that it's supposed to do.
Thank you, Dr. Jethro. The last question, and I know we're out of time, but I'm going to go ahead and pose it because we are here to answer your questions, is to Mr. King. The question is, please comment on any initiatives by DC Health aimed at lowering mortality for COVID patients from lower income wards.
Yes. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Great. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, we have partnered with various faith bodies in the city. We also are having special vaccination clinics throughout the city where people may go to get vaccinated without going through the regular portal. And we are using extensively credible messengers. In fact, I noticed the other day driving down the street that I'm up on a billboard on some of the the bus shelters and metro shelters throughout the city, and not just myself, but other people with roots in the community who are trusted messengers are being used to get the word out. We use social media. We know that many of our young people are adept at using Instagram and Twitter. We use those platforms to reach younger folk. We use Facebook to use older folk who seem to prefer Facebook. And we do numerous virtual presentations, probably every day, during the day and in the evenings. We go before the advisory neighborhood commissions in the city. There are over 30 of them in every ward. There are over 300 advisory neighborhood commissioners. We have civic and citizens associations. Just last week, I didn't even begin a presentation until after 10 o'clock at night. And so we are using every vehicle and strategy that we can to reach people of all age ranges. And I think our testing numbers attest that we're doing that.
Thank you, thank you. There was one last question posed for Dr. Jethro, but I'm gonna just answer it by, I asked him directly, and this is what he said. The question, is the vaccine safe for women who are planning to get pregnant? He said, so far, women who are planning to get pregnant can take the vaccine. All they need to do is consult with their primary care physician to confirm that their unique health conditions does not pose any additional risk to them. Anything else you want to add, Dr. Jethro?
Yeah, no, pregnancy is not one of the conditions that preclude people from getting the vaccine, but as you know, somebody could be pregnant and may have other factors that may affect their ability to have their immune system respond appropriately. That is why you need to check in with your physician just to confirm that you don't have any additional risk factors that will preclude it. But pregnancy by itself is not a reason to not take the vaccine. It is safe to take the vaccine.
Thank you. So if you look at the chat has a lot of information, phone numbers, links, things of that nature that have been added by Dr. King and others. Please copy it and get that information out to yourself, share it with others. And if you have any questions, you could always reach out to Ms. Iffy. I added my email in there. I want to say thank you to our speakers for staying an additional 30 minutes. And thank you to all those who joined us for staying the additional 30 minutes. First, I want to say a special thank you to His Excellency, who we know is not here, but his staff is still here. So thank you, ladies, for staying on this call and just learning more about what our community needs. Thank you to Kofi. Thank you for taking the extra time, because I know you're also a super busy schedule, and answering questions and sharing what Ghana has been able to do. Dr. Jethro, you've been very helpful in helping us understand this process, especially vaccination. And it always looks great when we have somebody who comes from our community who's able to answer these things. And so you've done that really well. Mr. King, thank you so much. I think hearing it directly from DC Health is always helpful, and sharing those resources and those links. I know DC Health has been very active and constantly being adaptable and trying to get as much information out there as possible. Leela, you guys continue to serve as a community resource for us. And I think it's very important to note that we are one of the only cities, if not the only city, that actually has our own office focused on African communities. So I think that's a very important monument that we need to celebrate, honor, and show up for. Something I do preach is that when the Mayor's Office on African Affairs has budget hearings or any hearings, we African community stakeholders need to show up, be present, and speak our piece so that our community can receive the same and equal access to resources through the city, right? So if we're not there, then we can't find the resources. Dr. Waldo and Ms. Iffy, you guys serve literally at the front center. Thank you guys for leading certain initiatives and just moving forward. Thank you all for your time. And Ms. Iffy, if you don't have anything else to say, do you have anything you want to add?
I want to recognize our Prince George's County counterparts, Dr. Sylvia Darcy, who also represent the African diaspora in Prince George's County. So thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Hopefully when we meet again, COVID will definitely be under control. So we thank all our experts. You guys are great. You do us a lot of pride. And thank you again.
Yes, just one last thing, you know, something like this can't really happen without the team behind it. So thank you to Miss Millie, Miss Jackie, Chris, Dua, who are part of the AWCAA team for working so hard and diligently to make this happen. And thank you all for just attending today. Please look forward to other stakeholder meetings. For those who weren't able to join us last, this is actually our third stakeholder meeting. So we will continue to have them and they show up quarterly. The whole point is to build collaboratives like this so we can better access information, but also better provide information to you. So I hope that you found this to be helpful and I hope that we continue to see you and collaborate with you. And thanks again to everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Cheers and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Helen, thanks for saving my neck.